This is my favorite time of year to draft best ball leagues. ADPs right now are extremely volatile. They're moving all over the place, and you can find yourself some great values in these drafts on Underdog. Unfortunately, though, with good values, there also comes some really bad values that you've got to avoid. I'm Dave Kluge with Footballguys, and I am here to help you recognize some of the worst current values on Underdog right now. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube page at youtube.com/footballguys so you can see these shorts coming at you throughout the entire season. Let's go ahead and dive in. The first guy that I want to highlight right now, who I think is completely overvalued, is Deandre Hopkins, who is the current wide receiver 14. Hopkins had one of his better seasons in 2020, and it was his first year with Arizona and Kyler Murray. That production and connection with a new quarterback put him in the discussion as the overall wide receiver one for the 2021 season. And he was off to a blazing hot start, but his production was bolstered by a career high touchdown rate. He was averaging one touchdown per game through his first 7 weeks and was the wide receiver 10 in half PPR scoring, which is underdog standard. Well, some absent minded managers were happy with the production. Savvy managers were very quick to realize the big disparity in usage from the previous season. After being the focal point of the offense in 2020 and averaging 10 targets per game, Hopkins was seeing just 6.7 targets per game last year. And then he got hurt in week 8 and played just 2 games for the rest of the season, which was extremely disappointing. Overall, he finished as the wide receiver 18 in points per game, but his uncharacteristically high touchdown rate is almost assured to drop heading into next year when he'll be 30 years old. There's no denying what Nuke did for 7 years. Between 2014 and 2020, it was one of the most dominant wide receiver performances we have ever seen in the NFL, despite the horrid quarterback play that he had to deal with during some of those years in Houston. Looking at his current ADP, though, there are guys like Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, and maybe even Tyler Lockett that are going behind him that I would prefer ahead of DeAndre Hopkins. Right now at wide receiver 14, I don't want any shares of him. If he drops into the late teens, early 20s, then I might start targeting him again, but I'm completely out at this current ADP. Another guy I want to talk about is another wide receiver, and he is everybody's favorite darling after a great rookie season, Monroe St Brown, who is the current wide receiver 23 in average draft position. There's no denying his insane finish to the end of his rookie season. Over a 6 game stretch, he recorded 11.2 targets, 8.5 receptions, 93.3 yards, and 0.8 touchdowns per game. On the surface, that is incredible, especially when you're looking at a fourth round rookie. What is missing from that sample, though, is some very valuable context. DeAndre Swift or TJ Hawkinson, who the offense flowed through all season, missed all of those games with injury. In the 11 games that Swift and Hawkinson were both healthy and available, St. Brown averaged 4.7 targets, 3.5 receptions, 32 yards, and had 0 touchdowns in those 11 games. There's no doubt about it. St. Brown is going to be very polarizing heading into 2022 because of these splits. His talent is great. He made some spectacular plays, but his situation, at least for me, is oddly reminiscent of what we saw from Brandon Ayuk in his rookie season in 2020. If you recall, Ayuk went on a tear at the end of the season, much like Monroe St. Brown, and was putting up consistent wide receiver 1 weeks. However, Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, who the offense flowed through, were injured in those weeks. This is just like what we saw last year with TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift missing some time. Obviously, George Kittle and TJ Hawkinson are both tight ends. Even when you look at DeAndre Swift and Deebo Samuel, even though they may have different positional designations, they play very similar roles both out of the backfield and lining up as a receiver. The similarities to Brandon Ayuk and Amon St. Brown when it comes to trajectory, production, team situation are uncanny, and that scares me off just a little bit. There's certainly a chance that Amon St. Brown is that rare fourth round wide receiver outlier, but seeing him get drafted ahead of Devonta Smith, Chris Godwin, Michael Pittman, Marquise Brown is entirely too rich for my blood, and I am completely out on the Sun God at that ADP. This brings me to the last guy that I am fading at his current ADP, and that is Derrick Henry, who is the current RB3. I know. Never fade the big dog. I heard it all last offseason, too. I was staunchly against drafting Derrick Henry in 2021. I cited his previous usage, his aid, the dreaded 400 touch club, the history of players coming off a 2,000-yard season, and his lack of pass catching ability. A few weeks into the season, I was eating my words and I had egg all over my face. He was putting up the best overall numbers of his career. But then in week 8, he got hurt and we didn't see him for the rest of the regular season. We got a glimpse of him in the playoffs and he didn't really do anything great. He mustered up a pretty disappointing 62 rushing yards on 20 carries. And while his overall numbers on that early season stretch were great, his efficiency wasn't, especially by his standards. He was averaging the fewest yards per carry since his second season in the league. His yards after contact per attempt were the lowest he has ever recorded. He wasn't breaking tackles as he used to, and his overall production was supported by a career high touchdown rate. There's a chance that Henry stays healthy for 17 games and just puts up monster numbers, could even have another 2,000-yard season. But he's 28 years old. He's got over 1,100 touches in his last 3 seasons, and he's coming off a severe foot injury. I'm fading him yet again heading into this season, especially at that RB3 price tag. Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, Dalvin Cook, and even DeAndre Swift are some backs that I would prefer ahead of him. I could even make a compelling case for Joe Mixon or Alvin Kamara in half PPR leagues. I love Derrick Henry as a football player. He is one of my favorite guys to watch, but currently there is way too much risk for me to invest a top 5 pick in drafting the big dog. Thanks for checking this out. I will keep bringing you these videos once a week through the entire offseason. We've got much more content coming your way as well. So subscribe at youtube.com/footballguys to continue checking these out throughout the entire offseason. Thanks for tuning in.